How are you doing today, President Card?
I am awesome. I'm on the campus of Franklin Pierce, every day is a great day here.
My name is Alex Powell. I'm a political science major and a rising junior. This is my co-host.
Alex Malm, also a junior here, political science. So we'll get into it. How did you begin your political career, Mr. President?
How did I begin my current career?
No,
my political career?
Yeah.
Well, I grew up in Holbrook, Massachusetts, which is a small town 15 miles south of Boston. And I grew up in a family where politics was not a dirty word. Mm-hmm. It was kind of an expectation that if you're a citizen of the United States, you should pay attention. My grandmother, this is my father's mother, was a very well-educated woman for her day, and she had been a suffragette. She fought for women to get the right to vote. Mm-hmm. So I remember seeing a picture that was taken of her, in theory, of all of these women marching down Commonwealth Avenue in Boston. They were wearing white dresses. And my grandmother is in the picture. She fought for women to get the right to vote. And when women did get the right to vote, which wasn't until 1920, in fact, it was August of 1920, my grandmother was literally the first woman in my hometown of Holbrook, Massachusetts, to register to vote. And she was controversial because she was such a militant activist for women having the right to vote, but she was also controversial because she also registered to be a candidate. And she ran for the school committee and served for a number of years on the school committee in Holbrook, Massachusetts. So I grew up in a family where my grandmother had a disproportionate interest in all of us, all of my siblings, to participate in the political process. And she said the most important word in the Constitution is actually the very first word. And the first word in the Constitution is we. And she said that's an all-inclusive word. We're invited to be part of the government. We're not obligated to be part of the government because we're not forced to vote. We're not forced to run for office. We're invited. And she said we should answer the invitation. We should be part of the we that is helping this country govern itself. And so I grew up in a family where we were expected to have opinions. We were not supposed to be monolithic in our thinking, so she did not expect us to agree with each other. But we had to do our homework, form opinions, discover causes that we supported, candidates that we supported. So we were active in the political process, and she did not care who we supported, what we supported, just as long as we had the courage to do our homework and then stand up and say, I think this is the right thing to do, or this is the right person to support. So I grew up in a family where I was kind of expected to participate in the political process, and I didn't know that it was rare. I thought it was like everybody did it. And then I learned that, far too many people say, that's politics. I hate politics. I don't participate. No, everybody should. And it didn't make any difference what your calling in life was. I'm an engineer by training. And if you go back and look at my high school yearbook, what do you want to do when you graduate from high school? When you grow up, I said, I want to be an engineer and a politician. Okay. Now, I didn't know that there were very few engineers who became politicians. Right. And for some, that means that I'm an oxymoron. So I don't know whether I'm the oxy or the moron, because I've been an engineer and a politician. But I grew up thinking that we had an obligation to participate. I loved participating. I loved discovering causes and candidates. I loved helping them. I became passionate in supporting causes and candidates, and then I wanted to run for office. So I didn't get involved for any Machiavellian reason. It wasn't like I want to take the biggest ego trip in the world and run for office. No, I actually wanted to get involved because I cared, I wanted to make a difference, and I wanted to stand up and be counted. So I didn't even mind being lonely in politics if I believed in what I was saying.
Okay. Very good.
Well, then, as your time as Chief of Staff for the Bush administration, how did your time in the White House prepare you for the duties and difficulties that now come with running a university?
Working at the White House is a phenomenal privilege. And so I'm going to suggest to you, if you ever get an invitation to work at the White House, say yes.
I plan to.
Okay? Even if you don't know why they asked you to do it, because my point is, even if you work there for one day, they can't take that one day away from you. And that one day was terrific. So it was a great privilege to work at the White House. But I never thought that I would be working at the White House. So it wasn't something that I said, gee, one day I'm going to be working at the White House. And I remember when I received an invitation to go work in the White House the first time, it was after I had run a forgettable campaign for governor of Massachusetts, and I lost in the primary, and then I received a phone call from the chief of staff to President Reagan asking me if I'd ever thought about coming down to Washington, D.C. to work, and I was invited to come work in the White House. Great privilege. But how did that experience of working in the White House, going all the way from special assistant to the president for intergovernmental affairs, liaison to governors and statewide elected officials, that was my title. Remember, the longer your title, the less important you are. All the way up to becoming chief of staff to the President of the United States. It was a great learning experience. It was a great experience in leadership. It was a great experience in, I'm going to say, understanding that most decisions that are made by a president are really hard decisions. They're not easy decisions. I think all of that helped me be prepared to be the president of Franklin Pierce University. It's a microcosm. It's a very small entity. There are only 1,440 students on this campus, another 880 on other campuses around New Hampshire and in Goodyear, Arizona. But the challenges are quite significant because decisions that I make impact your life as students. Decisions that I make impact the ability of somebody else to consider coming to Franklin Pierce. It also impacts the value of a degree that somebody else earned a long time ago, so the alumni. So I'm carrying a responsibility much less than that of a president of the United States. But I did have a sense of what it means to carry a burden where other people are depending on you to create either pride, opportunities, success, or comfort as you live your life as a student or as an alumnus. So I feel as if being president of the United States did help me understand. I am able to put some of the decisions that I have to make in the context. This is not that big of a deal. It sounds like a big deal on campus right now, but in the context of going to war, it's nothing like going to war. It's nothing like sending somebody into harm's way. But there are big decisions to be made, and I try to do it with optimism. I guess my simple statement would be, working for the president allowed me to recognize that a good leader can never be in a position to say, follow me, and things will get worse. So you have to be optimistic and say, follow me, and things are going to get better. The good news about Franklin Pierce is you represent phenomenal optimism. I don't think there's a student that comes to Franklin Pierce that doesn't think, I'm excited to be here, this is awesome. Now, there are faculty here who are saying, oh, it's miserable being here. Or there may be administrators who say, oh, it's miserable being here. No, I'm here because you're optimistic, and I want to turn your optimism into something that is really contagious. So that every faculty member, every administrator has the same level of optimism that you do, and that's what I'm trying to lead the university forward. So follow me. Things are going to get better. Even though we've had challenges in the past, and there will always be challenges in higher education. There will always be challenges with small colleges like Franklin Pierce, nestled away in a spectacular spot in New Hampshire, where if you want to go to the mall, it's a long way to the mall. If you need Starbucks coffee, it's like 12 miles to Keene. So this is a special place, but that doesn't mean the special place doesn't have challenges, and I'm trying to address the challenges in such a way that we build a foundation at Franklin Pierce that you will be proud to stand on, not only as a student, but as an alum, and you'll want to come back and help make that foundation even stronger for future students.
This building is named after Marlon Fitzwater, someone you know very well. How do you think his legacy is going to go down as when he obviously passes on in 10, 15 years from now? How do you think people are going to remember him?
I hope he lives for another 30 years.
We hope so too.
Although he needs to lose a little bit of weight. Marlon needs a little more exercise. And he needs to visit this campus more.
Right.
Because by visiting this campus, he gets infected with your optimism. So I want him to come back to the campus. But Marlin Fitzwater did a wonderful thing for Franklin Pierce University. He allowed the university to use his name to give credibility to a discipline that is desperately needed in a democracy, and that's communications. And the good news is, by Marlin giving his name, he also gave the university more credibility than it would have had if we just said, we have a communications center.
Right.
Because it's the Marlin Fitzwater Center, people now know that he's serious about you. He's credible in talking to you because he earned the respect of a lot of cynics. If you are a reporter covering the White House, your primary job is to second guess every decision made by the White House. So you show up as a cynic. What are you doing? Why did you do this? And the person that had to address the cynics was Marlin Fitzwater. And he had to be credible. He could never lie. He had to be uplifting because, again, he couldn't go out there and say, we're testing this out to see how bad it is. No, he had to say, the president made a really tough decision today, but let me tell you why it was the right decision. So he had to explain what was being done, even where he might not have been part of the discussion as to why. He had to say, the president made this very, very tough decision. It is controversial because every decision the president makes is controversial.
Right.
But let me tell you why it's important that the president's decision be the one embraced by bureaucrats working in the executive branch of government, a Congress that's always skeptical, a United Nations that always wonders why does America have to lead, and allies around the world that want to respect us. I'm going to say enemies around the world that do fear us, and we want to make sure they continue to fear us, and then the neutrals around the world who want to say, I'm really glad that America is paying attention. And Marlin Fitzwater did that, I think, better than any press secretary in history, in part because he was doing it at a phenomenally challenging time in history. He entered office. He started working at the White House about 2 weeks after I started working at the White House. He started working there in September of 1983. I had started working there in August of 1983. So we entered the White House kind of together. We became very good friends, worked for President Reagan, then we worked for the first President Bush. Then I came back and worked for the second President Bush. But Marlin and I overlapped at a critical time, and Marlin was probably the second most visible person at the White House communicating not only to America but to the world. The president obviously would have been the number one. The press secretary is number two. And he would stand up and have to take questions not only from a cynical U.S. press, but from a very cynical world press, sometimes representing not journalism, but a government.
Good.
And Marlin did it and earned rave reviews, not because of what he said, but by the way he spoke about what he had to say. He spoke about it honestly, with credibility, with sincerity, and he did it in such a way that people knew that if he said it, even if people didn't like it, they had to respect that he said it. And so I witnessed Marlin. He gave Franklin Pierce University his name. He gives you his time, which is very generous. But he also gave Franklin Pierce a legacy of respect that he hopes that you will carry forward. And that's why the graduates of the Fitzwater Center programs are a source of particular pride for Marlin Fitzwater. So if you've come to this school, participated in the Fitzwater Center, and you're a Fitzwater Fellow, and you move on to great success in the real world, you're carrying a legacy that Marlin Fitzwater handed to you, and he entrusted it to you. And he didn't tell you that you had to agree with him. He just said, whatever you do, you must reflect the kind of respect that he earned because of how he did his job.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, when you look back at your career as a politician, what was the single biggest influence in your life, whether it was an event, a person, anything?
Well, I would say the Constitution is a big deal to me, and being asked to work at the White House for a president, I viewed as quite significant, because a president is the personification of Article 2 in our Constitution. Article 1 in the Constitution, that's Congress, the House and the Senate. And there are whole bunches of people in that. You know. Article 3, those are the justices. Almost nobody knows their names. They wear robes, and they talk about today in the context of the past.
Right.
They never get to talk about the future. They get to talk about today in the context of the past. Was this constitutional? Article 2 in the Constitution is personified by one person, the President of the United States. And if the President asks you to help him or her do the job of President, it is a big deal. So just going to the White House, being asked to work at the White House, I viewed as a disproportionately big deal. That I had an obligation not to do the job for me, but to help the President do his job, to help Article 2 do the job. So I viewed it as a very big deal. So just the Constitution saying what Article 2 is made it a very big deal for me to go to work at the White House. And it was, wow, this is an awesome responsibility. I also had to recognize that with the responsibility comes great insecurity, because it's not a job.
Right.
It ends up being a commitment. Mm-hmm. And there is no expectation that it will be a career. Almost nobody has a career working for the President at the White House. Instead, you have an experience. And so the fancy piece of paper they give you when you get appointed by the President, and they call it a commission. So you're a commissioned officer. You're appointed by the President. And there's a caste system. At the top of the caste are assistants to the President. Then there are deputy assistants to the President. And then there are special assistants to the President. Those are people appointed by the President of the United States. And to have one of those appointments is a very big deal. Yeah. So when I was appointed special assistant to the President, I get this fancy piece of paper where it says, United States of America. Then it says, your name, what state you're from. And think, whoa. Then it says, what job you have. And the President is proud to appoint you to this position, and you serve at the pleasure of the President for the time being. That means there's no security. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because if the pleasure goes, you're gone. If the time being arrives, you're history. So you take the responsibility as a temporary responsibility to help the President do something that needs done. You're not supposed to be there if the President doesn't need you anymore. Right. So what impacted me most about it, other than the fact that I was asked to work for the personification of Article 2 in the Constitution, I got to meet some phenomenal people. And the two most significant individuals that I had the pleasure of working with and for were the first President Bush, George H.W. Bush, and then James A. Baker III. So those were the two most significant personalities that I worked with, and I say how privileged I am to be able to work with people that I have such great respect for. Not just as how they did the job, but how they lived their life. It was more the complete package of being a citizen rather than one slice of work experience. Okay. So the personalities that I came to respect the most were George H.W. Bush and James A. Baker III. Yes, I loved Ronald Reagan. Yes, I loved George W. Bush. Yes, I loved working with really smart people, including former professors and business leaders and whatever. But the two individuals that had probably the greatest impact on me beyond the job, it's really how you live your life, with George H.W. Bush and James A. Baker III.
Is there any chance that you'll be running for vice president next election cycle?
Would I love to be president of the United States? Yes. Would I love to run for president of the United States? Yes. Can you run for president of the United States with an expectation that you'll be the vice president? Lots of people do it. I know the process, and I know what I lack, and some of what I lack are resources. I know what it's like to have a spoon in my mouth that was not a silver spoon.
Right.
I come from Holbrook, Massachusetts, which is a blue-collar, working-class community that I love, and I've had experiences beyond any expectation. But I know that I could not self-fund a political campaign for President of the United States. I mentioned I ran a forgettable campaign for governor of Massachusetts. I had a hard time funding that poorly funded campaign. So, would I love to be president? Yes. Do I know that you can't just be president, you have to earn it? Yes. Do I have the capacity to earn it? I think I would have the capacity to earn it if I had a lot of people who believed in me. Do I have enough people believing in me? No. So I'm glad to support other people. I'll try to be part of the solution no matter where I am in life. I feel very privileged to be president of Franklin Pierce University. I am not here as a resume enhancer. I'm here because I believe in the mission that the school has, and I believe in your success. And right now, I'm all in to help Franklin Pierce University. That doesn't mean I'm not going to pay attention to who leads our country and what they're going to offer in terms of leadership, and I will be passionate about supporting the people I think could make a difference for the country, but I am not expecting that I would run for president. I'm not expecting that anybody would ask me to be a vice presidential running mate. I'm not expecting anybody to ask me to serve again in the federal government. If they do, I have an obligation to at least consider it, because I do believe that if a president asks you to help, your predisposition should be to say yes. You can try to talk them out of it. and I would say that if President Obama were to call me up and say, I need your help, I would predispose to say, I don't think you really want me because you know I didn't support you, but if you feel you really need me, I feel an obligation to say yes. So that's how I would come down. So that's a long way of saying desire alone doesn't allow you to become president. Expectations alone don't allow you to be the vice presidential nominee. So I'm dealing in the world that I know, which is helping you.
Well, this kind of ties into my last question there is, what's your vision going forward for Franklin Pierce University?
Franklin Pierce University is, I think, a place where the American dream can be invited to reflect itself in your success. And there are wonderful institutions around America that provide an education. And I will tell you, if you got accepted by Harvard or Amherst or Williams or Yale, probably you should have gone to Harvard, Amherst, Williams, or Yale. The fact that you came to Franklin Pierce means that you were not going to be handed the American dream. Instead, you're going to be invited to find out how to experience it. And Franklin Pierce, I think, is a place that prepares you for success that you may not have even thought you had. And that's why I'm here. I'm so committed to this school and the mission of the school. And this school is a special school because it is an intimate school in an isolated setting. So you can come here and discover friends that you would not make in other places, because you're kind of locked on the campus with people that you didn't know you liked, but you came to like them. You also came to a campus that is more of a village, and in the village, everybody knows your name. And so when you have a professor who takes an interest in you because you have a name and a face, and they know you not as a number, but they know you as Alex. And if they don't see you in class, they say, where is Alex? Would somebody text him and find out if he's okay? Yeah. Or might even get worse than that, they may say, would somebody run over to the dorm? Would you run over to Monadnock or Granite, or would you go find him? Is he okay? You don't find that happening at most schools around America. But that's the intimate relationship that Franklin Pierce has as a village with the people who are residents of this village. So that's why I'm here. I believe in the mission of the school, the success that the school produces, and you know that if you were accepted to most universities in America, your first session would be in some large classroom. There'd be 500 or 600 people sitting in this auditorium, and somebody would stand up in front of you and say, "Look left and look right. Only one of you will make it." And I'm always offended by that, because if they're looking to have 2/3 of you fail, why did they accept you? I'm saying at Franklin Pierce, we accept you to be a student here because we want to be party to your success. So I'm not going to stand in front of a classroom and say, "Look left and look right, only one of you will make it." I'm going to say, "Look right and look left, all three of you are going to make it."
Right.
If you're committed to success, we're committed to success. And I doubt that anybody came here because they thought they were going to fail.
Right.
So that's why I'm here.
Well, we thank you for your time, and we
Thank
thank
you.
you for your optimism. And one last thing, if you wouldn't mind taking a selfie with us for our
A
Twitter.
selfie? Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know whether to call Twitter or Tweaker.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.